Shalom, I'm Rabbi Michael Panitz. I'm the Rabbi of Temple Israel of Norfolk, Virginia, speaking to you from the pulpit of our congregation. At this time, my message is entitled, Your Children's World is Burning. Your children's world is burning. As Jews, we try to be champions of tolerance. We have been allies of the persecuted. We have marched with them, gone to jail with them, defended them in courts of law, donated time, resources, and talents towards making society more just and equitable. It is surprising, therefore, to read the harsh words of the Bible, seemingly intolerant, about smashing the altars of the pagan Canaanites. In this week's reading, we learn what it is that set off Moses so strongly. Quote, "Every abhorrence of the Lord that God hates, they, the Canaanites, have done for their gods. For even their sons and their daughters they burn in fire to their gods." Deuteronomy 12:31. From this verse, we learn that it is not their polytheism per se that the Bible opposes. In fact, earlier Moses says that God apportioned the sun and the moon and the stars for the other nations to worship. So it's not polytheism that is itself the problem, but rather their abominable lack of ethics, reflected above all in their practice of child sacrifice. In the world of the Bible, as elsewhere in the Stone and Bronze Ages, the principal means of worship was by sacrifice. A foodstuff, animal or plant-based, would be consumed by fire and its smoke would rise into the sky. What distinguished the sacrificial practice of Israel from that of its neighbors was the Israelite rejection of human sacrifice. That is the ultimate point of the famous story about Abraham and Isaac on Mount Moriah, that God altered the then conventional expectations of child sacrifice and told Abraham at the decisive moment not to slay his son. What we learn in the Genesis narrative is repeated in the Holiness Code of Leviticus as the rationale for the eviction of the Canaanites from their land and its resettlement by the Israelites. Quote, "Do not dedicate any of your seed to pass over to Molech." That was the god of the Moabites. "For all these abhorrent deeds did the men of the land who were before you do, and the land was defiled, and the land spewed out the nation that was before you." Leviticus chapter 18, verses 21 and 27. I'm sure that we read these condemnations of child sacrifice and feel as if we are superior to the Canaanites. Of course, we're not practicing that particular abomination. But before we give ourselves a total pass, we ought to ask ourselves a question that may yield an uncomfortable answer. Are we producing a world in which our children's chance for a life as good as our own will be immolated? Are we producing the conditions for our children's world to be ravaged by fire? Global warming, the environmental crisis of the age, is behind the worsening of wildfires in recent years. At this heightened scale of devastation, even forest fires in remote areas have harmful effects on humans as well as animal and plant life. This past June, smoke from uncontrollable wildfires in northeastern Canada traveled many hundreds of miles and made the air we breathe dangerously toxic for days. When I was in New York City on June 7th, the air was literally a sickly orange. Of course, forest fires close to densely populated areas pose direct risks to life and property. In recent years, California has witnessed the growing threat of inferno, forcing mass evacuations and destroying entire communities. In our High Holiday prayer, Unetane Tokef, we pose the thought that on Rosh Hashanah God judges us, and that some of us will perish by fire, mi va'esh. We say that to shake ourselves out of moral complacency and spur ourselves to righteous behavior. Now is the time to change our ways, to avoid an even greater worsening of the plague of uncontrollable fire, degrading the world we are leaving to our children. Let it not be said of our generation that our false god was greed, and that in the worship of short-term benefits we destroyed the world, condemning our children to a world visited all too often by fire. The hour is late. Some of the damage is upon us. Simply to mitigate the damage, we need to alter our patterns of energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions quickly and decisively. God made this world an Eden. It is up to us to prevent it from becoming a hell of our own devising. As consumers, as citizens, as neighbors to the children of the world, our mandate is clear. We must be better stewards of the world God has given us to tend. The words of the prophet are written not only on subway walls and tenement halls, as Simon and Garfunkel sang. The words of the prophet are also written on blackened dead tree trunks all across the continents. Let us read those words, let us heed those words, and let us restore hope for tomorrows to come. Amen.